All right, everyone. When we think of Spartan warriors, our minds usually jump straight to the 300, right? The heroes of Thermopylae. But today, we're going to peel back that layer of myth and really dissect the Spartan War Machine, one of the most feared and, frankly, one of the most misunderstood armies in all of history.
So, where do we even begin? Well, right away we hit a wall. As the great historian Thucydides tells us here, the Spartans were deliberately intensely secretive about their military. They weren't exactly leaving behind handy organizational charts for us to study.
So what do? We have to become historical detectives. We're going to piece together clues from battle accounts, from quotes, even from things as simple as tombstones, to reconstruct this incredible machine behind the legend. And that's exactly what we're jumping into right now.
First things first, to understand the Spartan army, you have to understand Spartan society. Because your role in battle, it was completely locked in by your social status. This wasn't some army of equals. This was their entire social pyramid, sharpened to a point and aimed at the enemy.
At the very top of that pyramid, you've got the Spartiates. These are the guys from the movies, right? The legends, forged from childhood in that brutal training system called the Agoj. They were the absolute core of the phalanx and the entire officer class. But, and this is a huge but, there were never very many of them, and their numbers were in a constant, terrifying decline.
So, if your elite fighting force is shrinking, what do? Well, you rely on the next group down, the perioikoi, which literally means the dwellers around. These were free men, they just weren't Spartan citizens. And they were absolutely essential, fighting as hoplites in the same units, shoulder to shoulder with the Spartiates.
And if you want proof of just how important they were, look at this. This isn't just a theory from some dusty book. This is hard evidence. A simple tombstone telling us that a man named Eutyches, a non-citizen from a perioikoi town, died fighting for Sparta in the massive Battle of Mantinea. That's history, literally carved in stone. And at the very bottom, holding this whole fragile system up, were the Helots. This was a massive state-owned serf population. They served the army as servants and as light-armed troops, but they were also Sparta's single greatest fear. The constant threat of a Helot uprising shaped every single thing about Spartan society and its army.
Now, you'd think a system this rigid would just snap, right? But it actually had some surprising flexibility. You had elite units of perioiko, called the Skiratai, who acted almost like special forces, screening the army on the march. And you even had cases where Helots, like the so-called Brazilians, could earn their freedom through exceptional military service and even form their own units.
Okay, so you've got this incredible mix of people, super elite citizens, loyal non-citizens, and even some freed slaves. How on earth do you organize all of them into a single, cohesive, and terrifyingly effective army on the battlefield?
Well, lucky for us, Thucydides gives us a pretty clear blueprint from the Battle of Mantinea. The basic building block was a regiment, a laukos, of around 500 men. And each laukos was neatly divided into 4 companies, and each company into 4 platoons. It's a beautifully simple, modular design that you can scale up or down.
And that structure created this incredibly clear and efficient chain of command. Orders could flow from the king down to his senior officers, the polemarchs, then to the regiment leaders, the company leaders, and right down to the platoon leaders. In the absolute chaos of an ancient battle, this system let the Spartans maneuver with a speed and precision that just horrified their enemies.
So we've seen the people, we've seen the plan. Now let's see how this machine actually held up under extreme pressure. We're going to look at 2 key battles that reveal everything about this army, its incredible strengths and its hidden fatal flaws.
We start with the absolute disaster at a place called Sphacteria in 425 BC. Here, a trapped Spartan force did something completely unthinkable, something that sent shockwaves through the entire Greek world.
They surrendered. That number, 120, it might not seem huge, but these were 120 times elite Spartiates who were taken alive. It just shattered the myth of Spartan invincibility. These were the men who were supposed to come back with their shield or on it, not captured. And Thucydides here just perfectly captures the total shock everyone felt. Nobody could believe it was possible. And what this disaster really showed was Sparta's biggest weakness. They had so few of these elite soldiers, they literally couldn't afford to lose them anymore. A heroic last stand had become a luxury they couldn't afford.
But then, just a few years later at Mantinea, we see the complete opposite. Now, this battle almost went horribly wrong. There was a dispute between the commanders, and the whole army suffered from this thing called rightward drift, where hoplite lines naturally edged to the right,
opening a big, dangerous gap. And yet, their core discipline managed to snatch victory right from the jaws of defeat.
So how did they do it? Get this. Thucydides tells us they advanced into battle not with some screaming war cry, but with the cool, deliberate, and probably terrifying sound of flute players. This wasn't for show. It was a practical tool to keep the line together, to maintain that cohesion in the heat of battle. It's the mark of absolute professionals.
So, after all that, what's our final verdict? What was the true nature of this legendary Spartan war machine?
It's really a paradox. Its incredible strength, that unparalleled discipline, came directly from its unique and rigid social system. But that exact same system was also a trap. It depended completely on a constantly shrinking class of elites, all propped up by a massive, resentful population of helots they had to control. So you have to ask yourself, was the very foundation of Spartan power also the built-in reason for its eventual collapse? It was a war machine built on a social fault line. And that's a paradox worth thinking about for any great power, whether it's ancient or modern.